Overwatch is hard, and there is a lot that needs to be learned in order to perform in a game even though the top streamers make it look so easy. With Overwatch 2 on the horizon, I have just what you need to catch up and focus on the important things moving forward. When first picking up Overwatch, there is a lot that a player has to learn in order to catch up and have fun with the game. But with the surplus of educational content waiting for the player, it is difficult to know what the most important concepts are and which ones to learn first. Many players dive right in and try to gather as much knowledge as possible in hopes to learn the game faster. But what if this isn't the way to go about it? Just like a child, the player is extremely impressionable when first playing and learning the game. Massive information intake can overload the player, causing them to develop bad habits, unaware of the mistakes they are really making. This can create a lot of problems for their future. If the player does try and correct these habits, it is much harder to pull off as opposed to not messing it up in the first place. This is known as proactive interference, which is the experience of difficulty when learning new tasks because of old tasks that have already been learned. In the case of Overwatch, it forces players into setting their attention on the wrong things, creating poor awareness on the crucial situations Overwatch constantly offers. Your attention hyperfixates, almost like that of a spotlight in a dark room, but it is up to the player to know what to point that spotlight on. So proactive interference sets many players back by moving their learned attention to the wrong places, degrading their awareness of the situation. There is still a question to answer though. How does one go about combating these problems, allowing for the player to set their attention on the right things? The first thing you need to realize as you are pushing to improve as a player is that striving for understanding over memorization is crucial. Understanding the content that you are consuming allows you to avoid proactive interference by vetting out the bad stuff. In other words, ask questions when something doesn't make sense. If I say that you should split up on a brawl composition, call me out on that. It wouldn't make sense if a composition that is meant to stay as a unit in close distance splits apart. Now, obviously this method only works if you know that something is wrong. If you are unsure about something, that is why you ask questions. If you don't truly understand it, you don't want to forge it into a habit. Content creators are not perfect, especially if you are attempting to make a bunch of videos in a saturated space. The same thing goes with teachers, professors, and coaches alike. Most of the time, they are accurate, but if something doesn't make sense, questions should be asked. The knowledge you are gaining isn't going to be correct 100% of the time, so it is important you promote understanding instead of memorization. Second, think about how fast each character wants to play and what their kits excel at. Also understand how characters react with other characters and the threats that they can create together. For example, it is important to understand the tempo a Doom Reaper composition wants to play as compared to that of a Hanzo Widow or Double Sniper composition. Another example could be playing D.Va into a Sigma as compared to a Zarya. If the enemy has a Zarya, you have to look to eat her ultimate as compared to understanding that you can play a lot more aggressively against a Sigma that usually plays a lot slower. Understanding these things will help your mind with paying attention to the right things instead of not knowing what to focus on at all, feeling like climbing is an impossible challenge to conquer. It is a lot easier to think about these scenarios for one character at a time so that you can get better at understanding what is important within every match. That is why I personally recommend players to specialize in specific roles. If you don't know what role you feel you should fit in, there is a link in the description as well as on screen to help you with deciding what path is best for you. But let's move on to our last point. Take concepts one at a time. If you want to learn something in Overwatch, make sure you understand that concept completely before you move on to the next topic. Remember, you want to avoid proactive interference and overloading the brain with too much information. This is a lot easier said than done, however. Practices like taking notes and dedicating one session to one thing to improve on at a time is a great way to portion out your practice in order to get the maximum benefit from your time. This might seem like a stupid thing to do, but the little bit of extra work makes a big difference. This tip does require you to VOD review, however, in some capacity, which isn't accessible monetarily for everyone. Luckily enough, I have made a guide in the past that pertains directly to this subject. You can find a link to that in the description, and I highly encourage you to do this. In this sense, you could VOD review with the classic intention, seeing where you die and learning how you can avoid it, but this won't really work if your problem is to simply see what is going on in the macros sort of sense. What I mean by this is to go into the VOD review in a third person rather than just the first person perspective and see what your teammates are doing. Try to deduce what they are doing and why, or even look at yourself yourself and try to see what your teammates are doing. You could also look to see at things you weren't looking at during the game that you missed. At the end of the day, you are making sure you aren't missing events within the game. So the most important thing is that you are looking at different things and changing your perspective as much as possible until you understand your problems. So now that we have talked about the tips, what's the point? Don't overload yourself and take the learning process one step at a time. The more you push yourself to learn faster, the more risk you put on yourself that you will learn bad information. This is why questions are incredibly important to improve so that you can promote deeper understanding instead of getting rich quick. It almost never works that way. If you feel overwhelmed, take a look at your VODs and understand what you really want to look for. If you have no clue what just happened in the game you played, try to understand the moving parts besides yourself and how the story played out. If you are looking to find personal mistakes, then look at when you die or when crucial teammates die and see what you could have done to prevent that. Don't think one-dimensionally in the present, but also in the past to see if you could do something differently that would lead you to be in a different position or give you a few extra picks. Overwatch is hard, and it's not easy to simply fix your mistakes overnight. It takes thousands of hours to learn this game, but it can take thousands more if you rush through things. If you are looking to see this in action, the VOD I posted this Tuesday is a great example of what you can do to fix the problem over time. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below and I will answer them. But until next time, I've got to peace out and Paz out. I'll see you in the next one.